Let's talk about the one simple shift in thinking that separates the businesses that absolutely crush it from those that just fade away. We're diving deep into the data-driven marketing revolution. And hey, if you want more explainers just like this one, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe right now. It really helps. Okay, let's do this. So, let's kick things off with a story. In the absolutely brutal world of retail, how does one company thrive while another, one that looks almost identical, completely goes extinct? It's a classic tale of survival of the fittest. And believe me, the answer is almost always hiding in plain sight, in the data. For anyone out there in marketing, this quote probably hits a little too close to home. It's the reality, right? The pressure's always on. You got to justify every single dollar and prove every campaign's worth with cold, hard numbers. Gut feelings, they just don't fly anymore. You have to prove your value or you're out. To really see this in action, we've got to look at a classic showdown. Imagine two massive electronics retailers. They're facing the same market, the same customers, the same challenges, but they chose completely different paths, and that decision made all the difference in the world. So, on one side, you had Circuit City. Their whole game was about constant sales, always chasing that short-term revenue. And on the other side, you had Best Buy, focusing on building a brand and, crucially, using data to understand their customers. You know, what's really telling is that Best Buy didn't even see Circuit City as a competitor. They knew their real fight was with a powerhouse like Walmart. Best Buy saw that Circuit City was completely trapped in what you could call a death spiral, a vicious circle. See, to keep the revenue numbers looking good, they had to keep running promotions, but their margins were so razor thin that every sale was actually losing them money. They were literally selling themselves into bankruptcy, which is exactly what happened in 2009. So what was Best Buy's secret weapon? Well, it was actually pretty simple. They started keeping score. They looked beyond just the total sales numbers and started to measure what actually mattered. You know, who their customers really were and what they truly wanted. So instead of just yelling at everyone with the same message, they built these incredibly detailed customer profiles. They identified these key groups like Jill, the suburban mom, who was actually making most of the family's big tech purchases. So armed with this data, they retooled entire stores just for her, from the banners on the wall to the products on the shelves. And the result, sales in those stores went through the roof. Okay, now this is where it gets really, really interesting. This whole keeping score idea isn't just a one-hit wonder. Let's look at three brilliant and totally different examples of how using data delivered almost unbelievable results. First up, Porsche. Think about this challenge. You're launching a car that costs over 130 grand, and your target audience is some of the busiest, hardest to reach people on the planet. So they didn't just run a TV ad, no way. They created this exclusive, personal journey. It was a multi-step experience that made every single customer feel seen and valued. And the results of that incredibly personal campaign? A staggering 30% response rate. That's insane. Nearly 1/3 of their target list actually engaged with them. It just goes to show, when you make it personal and you use your data, even the most elusive customers will sit up and pay attention. Now, let's flip to the other end of the scale, Sears. At their peak, they were mailing 250 million, that's billion with a B, catalogs every single year. And yeah, it generated about $900 million in sales. On paper, that looks like a home run, right? But here's the real question, the one that separates the winners from the losers. If your campaign costs $250 million to run, are you actually making any money? Remember, revenue is vanity, but profit is sanity. It's the only thing that keeps the lights on. So what did they do? They stopped shouting into the void and started having conversations. Sears dug deep into its data and sliced its massive customer list into 25 unique groups. So instead of one giant generic catalog, they created smaller, targeted versions for each specific group, turning a potential money loser into a real profit machine. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Porsche? Sears? Those are huge companies with giant budgets. But here's the most important takeaway of all. You don't need a massive budget to do this. The real power comes from starting with small, smart wins. Let's take the Royal Bank of Canada. Their old way of selling retirement plans was, well, it was about as inefficient as you can get. The sales team would get a list of names, and they just start calling them in alphabetical order. Seriously. Aardvark, Adams, Allen. You can imagine how that went. So they made one single change. They didn't hire 100 new people.
They just built a simple data model to predict who was most likely to actually buy a plan. So now, instead of that alphabetical list, the sales team got a list that was ranked, with the hottest leads right at the very top. And this chart just says it all, doesn't it? The power of that one little change was incredible. The team's success rate went from maybe 1, maybe 2 hits for every 10 calls to a mind-blowing 8 out of 10. That's not just an improvement, that's a total game changer, all from one smart use of data.
Or look at Continental Airlines. Back in the mid-90s, they were famous for being the worst airline in the industry. A total joke. They turned it all around, not with some giant expensive overhaul, but by focusing on small, data-driven wins. They figured out who their most valuable customers were, and when something went wrong, like a delayed flight, they sent them a personal apology letter. That one small act led to an 8% revenue boost just from those customers. So what does all of this boil down to? Well, keeping score isn't just some new marketing tactic. It's a completely different way of seeing your business. It's about how you're steering the ship and navigating the road ahead.
Think about it this way. If the only thing you track is last quarter's sales, you are literally driving your business by staring into the rearview mirror. Sure, it tells you exactly where you've been, but it gives you absolutely no information about the sharp turn, the giant pothole, or the amazing opportunity that's right there in front of you. So this is the ultimate question you have to ask yourself. A data-driven approach gives you the full dashboard. You get the speedometer, the fuel gauge, the warning lights, and most importantly, that big, clear view through the windshield. It lets you anticipate what's coming and navigate the future with confidence.
So before you click away, let's just lock in these key takeaways. Stop guessing and start measuring. Use your data to find your most valuable customers, your Jills. Remember that even the smallest, smartest experiment can lead to huge results. And personalization is how you cut through all the noise out there. Because at the end of the day, the future belongs to the businesses that measure what really, truly matters.
Thanks so much for watching. If you got some value out of this breakdown, it would mean the world to us if you hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the strategies that are shaping our world. We'll see you in the next one.